Kemi, EFCC is raiding political candidates' homes all week. If they enter this house, they won't find anything, right?
Baby, I've spent 5 years making sure your path to the State House is clean. You don't have to worry about a thing.
You sound very sure.
Because I know exactly what I buried.
The man who tried to send me to prison was the same man I once saved from it. His name was Richard Chukwudi. To Lagos, he was a visionary CEO, a philanthropist, and the next governor in waiting. To me, he was the man who once sat across from me in an audit room, shaking so badly he could not hold a pen. That was the first version of Richard I ever knew, not the billboard, not the campaign smile, not the powerful man surrounded by cameras, the guilty man behind the numbers. I was a forensic auditor then. Sharp, quiet, too good at finding what people buried. Richard's company had hired my firm to review their books after investors started asking questions. On paper, it was a routine audit, but numbers have a smell, and Richard's book smelled like panic. Payments were moving through strange accounts. Investor funds had been used where they should not have been touched. Internal memos did not match bank activity. Approvals were missing in one place and duplicated in another. By the time I finished tracing the money, I knew what Richard had done. He had used investor funds to keep his dying tech company alive. He called it survival. The law would have called it fraud. That night, after everyone left the office, Richard asked to speak to me alone. We sat in a glass conference room with the blinds pulled down. His tie was loose, his eyes were red. No arrogance, no charm, no expensive watch flashing under boardroom lights. Just a man who had run out of lies. "Kemi," he whispered, "if this report goes out, hundreds of people lose their jobs. My company dies. My life ends. Please, you are the only one who can fix it." I should have walked away. I should have submitted the report exactly as it was. I should have let Richard face the consequences of his own character. But I made the mistake that changed my life. I mistook desperation for honesty. I did not steal with Richard. I did not move 1 naira before he had already dirtied his own hands. I did not create his fraud, but I gave him a way to survive it. I forced him to sign personal liability documents. I traced the missing investor funds. I made him liquidate assets quietly. I built a documented recovery structure to return the money before the company collapsed. I prepared a confidential emergency report for the board that told enough truth to save the company, but not enough truth to destroy the man. The investors were repaid. The workers kept their jobs. The company survived. And Richard survived. But I kept a sealed audit archive. Every original transfer, every warning I gave him, every signed acknowledgement, every board memo, every digital hash linked to the original documents. At the time, I told myself I kept it for professional protection, but deep down, maybe I knew. A man who begs you to hide his shame may one day hate you for knowing where he is buried. 1 year later, Richard asked me to marry him. He said he could not stop thinking about the woman who saved his life. He called me his second chance, his miracle, his backbone. I believed him. That was my second mistake. Because marriage should never feel like compensation for saving a man. 5 years later, that same man stood in front of our bedroom mirror, adjusting the cufflinks I bought him on our 3rd wedding anniversary. White shirt, navy suit. That expensive calm politicians wear when they are about to lie to a whole nation. He smiled at himself first, then he turned to me. "Kemi, EFCC is raiding political candidates' homes all week. If they dig into our records, they'll find nothing but a loyal wife. Are you sure everything is perfect?" I walked toward him slowly and straightened his silk tie. "My husband," I said, with the steady smile of a woman who had spent 5 years protecting him from the version of himself he hated, "I've made sure your path to the State House is clean. You don't have to worry about a thing." He studied my face. Maybe he was checking for fear, maybe guilt, maybe suspicion. He found none. I kissed his cheek and watched his armored SUV pull out of the gates with a security convoy behind him. The moment the last car disappeared, I bypassed the household staff and went straight to my home office. As a forensic auditor, I noticed what other people dismiss. A drawer closed too softly, a pen shifted half an inch, dust broken where nobody should touch. That morning, I noticed the thin black thread I always placed across the dial of my biometric safe had snapped. Someone had been inside. I locked my office door, put on gloves, manually overrode the safe, and there, sitting on top of my jewelry box, was a thick brown envelope. I did not need to open it to know what it was, but I opened it anyway. Inside was my sealed audit archive from 5 years ago, the one file that could destroy Richard if read properly, or destroy me if planted cleverly. My hand shook only once. Not from fear, from the insult. Richard did not just want to leave me, he wanted to rewrite me. He wanted the world to believe I was not the woman who saved his company. I was the criminal who created the fraud, the rogue auditor, the greedy wife, the woman who hid evidence in her private safe. I closed the envelope and went to the bookshelf. Behind an old tax law volume was a memory card from the private camera I kept in that office. It was not connected to the house Wi-Fi. Richard did not know it existed. The video loaded instantly. The woman entering my office was not Richard's campaign manager. It was Bolanle, his older sister. Bolanle moved through my office like a woman who believed every room in that house belonged to the Chukwudi bloodline. She opened the safe with an emergency override code only 3 people knew, placed the envelope inside and smiled. That smile told me everything. Bolanle had never forgiven me for marrying Richard. Before me, Richard had dated her best friend for 6 years. Bolanle had already planned the wedding, the grandchildren, the family empire. Then Richard met me, married me, and turned Bolanle's chosen woman into history. From that day, Bolanle treated my marriage like a temporary arrangement she had been assigned to dismantle. But this was bigger than jealousy. This was strategy. Richard wanted Tenny, his 26-year-old campaign manager. Everybody in Lagos political circles knew Tenny was more than campaign staff. She stood too close in photos, whispered too long in corners, smiled like a woman already measuring curtains in government house. But Richard could not divorce me cleanly. I owned part of the company. I knew the truth about his first scandal. And worst of all, I remembered him before the world started clapping. Men like Richard do not fear enemies. They fear witnesses. So he created a new story. I watched Bolanle on the screen and leaned back in my chair. Richard was not trying to punish me because I betrayed him. He was trying to punish me because I knew the version of him he had spent 5 years killing. I placed the envelope back exactly where Bolanle left it. Then I locked the safe. I did not burn it. I did not remove it. I did not run. Because my husband had made one mistake. He thought he was planting evidence. He did not know he had returned the archive to its owner. That evening, the ballroom of Echo Hotel was full of flashing cameras, expensive perfume, and people who laughed too loudly around money. Richard stood on the mezzanine, shaking hands with party leaders, billionaire donors, pastors, influencers, and men who whispered like they were buying pieces of the future. Bolanle stayed near him like a shadow, and Tenny moved around in a champagne dress that cost more than some people's yearly rent. Richard saw me and waved. "Kemi, darling, come. The chairman wants to meet the woman behind my success." I walked toward them in a black dress and the kind of smile that hides a knife without showing the handle. Richard pulled me into a side hug. "My wife is the backbone of everything I've built," he lied. "I would not be standing here without her tireless oversight." The chairman laughed. "Behind every great man, eh? Mrs. Governor-to-be, you must be proud." I looked at Richard. I am beyond proud. I've spent 5 years making sure Richard's foundations are unbreakable. It's amazing how much one can build when the work is done in the dark. Bolanle's hand tightened around her champagne flute. Tenny's smile twitched. Richard laughed too loudly. Only I knew exactly what I had said. When the chairman moved away, Bolanle leaned toward me. Careful, Kemi. The spotlight is bright tonight. Wouldn't want you to trip over your own secrets. I smiled. Don't worry about me, Bolanle. I already finished the heavy lifting. She did not understand. That was fine. People like Bolanle only recognize danger when it arrives in uniform. The gala continued. Richard went on stage and gave a speech about integrity, transparency, sacrifice, accountability. The same man who almost buried his company with stolen investor funds stood in front of donors and promised to clean Lagos. I clapped with everyone else. At 11 p.m., Richard came to my side. We're leaving, he muttered. Bolanle and I have to prepare for tomorrow. You should go to your mother's house tonight. The mansion will be busy in the morning. Campaign people, security, coordination. Coordination. That was what he called my arrest. I nodded. Of course. I wouldn't want to get in the way of your big day. Bolanle turned from the passenger's seat as they drove away and gave me a small mocking wave. I waved back. Then I entered my own car and opened my laptop. My driver did not ask questions. He knew me well enough to know silence was part of his salary. I opened the live feed from the camera I had moved that afternoon into the room beside my office. At 11:45 p.m., the mansion side door opened. Richard and Bolanle entered, laughing. Not tired, not worried, excited. They went straight to my office. I watched Bolanle open the safe. Richard stood behind her with a glass of cognac. They checked the envelope, touched the archive, repositioned it perfectly. Then Richard lifted his glass. To freedom, he said. Bolanle laughed. To finally removing that woman. The wife who saved him. The woman who met him shaking in an audit room and chose mercy. And before I tell you what happened next, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because this was the exact moment Richard thought he had trapped his wife, not knowing he had just touched the evidence that would destroy him. I did not wait for Friday morning. I opened the contingency folder and pressed one key. The first trigger went to the EFCC liaison. Not the full evidence, just enough. Live footage of a political candidate and his sister tampering with a sealed audit archive tied to an active financial integrity review. My message was simple. Evidence currently being moved at private residence. Risk of destruction. Immediate action advised. The second trigger went to the forensic consultant. The third went to the journalist. Timed for later. Not now. I did not need media noise before the law arrived. I needed Richard to feel safe enough to believe he was still in control. At 2:03 a.m., the silence in my mansion broke. Not with a polite knock, not with a warning, with headlights flooding the compound, boots hitting marble, and voices shouting commands through my front door. I was in the kitchen, still in my silk robe, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold in my hands. I did not know the exact minute they would come, but I knew once Richard touched that archive again, the clock had started. EFCC, nobody move. Richard came down the stairs in his pajamas, looking like a man dragged out of sleep. Bolanle followed him, clutching her chest and screaming my name like I had brought shame into the family. Richard looked at the officers, then at me. His eyes were wet already. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because I knew my husband well enough to recognize rehearsal. Officer, please search anywhere, he said, voice breaking. My office, my wife's office, the safes, the files, everything. I have nothing to hide. That was smarter. He did not point at the trap. He simply opened the whole house and waited for them to find it. 20 minutes later, they brought the brown envelope out of my office. My office, my safe, my house, my name. Sometimes that is all a trap needs. Bolanle broke down first. I knew it. I told Richard. I told him something was wrong with her. Richard covered his mouth like a man trying not to collapse. Kemi, how could you? The agents turned to me. One of them read my rights. The handcuffs closed around my wrists. For the first time that night, Richard looked directly into my eyes. He did not smile. He did not need to. His tears were doing the laughing for him. The ride to the EFCC office was quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. There is a difference. Peace has rest inside it. This silence had metal around my wrists. I kept my eyes on the window and watched Lagos pass by in pieces. Street lights, sleeping shops, a woman frying akara under a yellow bulb, a security man dozing beside a gate. Life was still moving while my husband tried to bury mine. At the office, they placed me in an interrogation room that smelled of cold air and old coffee. A lead investigator sat across from me. His face gave nothing away. That was how I knew he was good. He was not angry. He was not impressed. He was not sympathetic. He was working. The brown envelope sat between us on the table. Mrs. Chukwudi, he said, this archive was found in your private safe. Yes. You understand what that means. I understand what it looks like. He watched me. Then you should also understand that clever people often build clever stories around simple evidence. Good. He was not easy. That made me respect him. My lawyer sat beside me, silent but alert. I leaned forward. I'm not asking you to believe my story. I'm asking you to verify the order of events. The investigator did not blink. Go on. Check the protected disclosure sent to your liaison at 11:52 p.m. tonight. Check the sender's attached verification phrase. Then check the contingency folder linked in that disclosure. You will find a second package scheduled for release to a journalist if I disappear, if my lawyer is denied access, or if this archive is treated as final evidence without forensic verification. For the first time, his pen stopped moving, not because he believed me, because I had given him something testable. He looked at the second officer by the door. Confirm with digital intake, now. The officer left. Nobody spoke. I did not feel the silence. In rooms like that, innocent people talk too much because they think words can clean fear. I had learned long ago that evidence breathes better in silence. 10 minutes later, the officer returned and placed a tablet in front of the investigator. The investigator read. His face still did not change, but his eyes sharpened. You sent the disclosure. I sent the first one. And you are claiming this archive was planted? No, I said. I'm saying you should prove when it entered my safe, who accessed it, and whether the documents inside accuse me or identify Richard. His eyes stayed on mine. You're very calm for someone in handcuffs. I have had 5 years to learn the difference between fear and preparation. He closed the folder slowly. What exactly should my team verify? 3 things, I said. The safe access log, the seal index, and the digital hash record attached to the audit files. After that, check the personal liability documents Richard signed 5 years ago. He studied me for another long second. Then he stood. Keep her lawyer present. Nobody questions her further until forensics reports back. That was when I knew the door had opened. Not wide, not enough to walk through, but enough for truth to enter. 40 minutes later, the room changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for everyone to stop looking at me like a woman they had already solved. The archive had not been built to hide Richard's crime. It had been built to document the recovery from it. Every original transfer carried Richard's authorization. Every recovery payment carried his signature. Every warning memo carried my name as the auditor who told him what had to be repaired. Every board communication showed that I had documented the risk, not created it. And the most recent safe access log showed the archive was placed in my safe hours before the raid through an override linked to Bolanle's device. The investigator returned with the file in his hand. This time he sat differently. Not friendly, never friendly, but no longer blind. Mrs. Chukwudi, he said, why did you leave it there? I looked toward the glass, where I knew Richard was somewhere in the building, still acting like the betrayed husband. Because my husband wanted you to find it. I only wanted you to read it. By morning, Richard and Bolanle were no longer waiting comfortably at home. They were in separate rooms, and separation does something to conspirators. It removes courage. Through the glass, I watched Bolanle cry first. She said Richard told her the archive would prove I manipulated everything. Richard said Bolanle hated me and planted it alone. 5 years of family loyalty collapsed in less than 1 hour. The investigator asked me one more question. Why did you keep the archive for 5 years? I looked at Richard through the glass. Because when a man begs you to bury his shame, you learn something about him. And if you are foolish enough to help, you should at least remember where you put the shovel. Richard was brought into the room later that morning. He looked older already. Not because of prison. Because power leaves a man's face quickly when fear enters. Kemi, he whispered. For 1 second, he sounded like the man who once begged me to save him. I did not answer. He moved closer, chains clinking. You have to help me. Tell them you handled the recovery alone. Tell them I did not understand what I signed. We can fix this. We can leave the country. I'll give you anything. Anything. That word almost made me laugh. I remembered our early marriage. The small apartment before the mansion. The nights we ate late because he worked until midnight. The day he bought me flowers with money he did not have. The man I thought I was saving. Then I remembered Tenny standing beside him at the gala, wearing the future he had promised another woman. Richard, I said softly, you are still asking me to save you from a fire you started. His face hardened. I made you Mrs. Richard Chukwudi. No, I said. You gave me your name because you thought gratitude was love. I made you untouchable, and you mistook my loyalty for weakness. You planned this, he snapped. I documented this. There is a difference. He leaned in, eyes red. You think you've won? I still know where your family lives. The room went still. My lawyer sat up. I did not move. The police are already at your bank, Richard. EFCC is freezing your accounts. Your security detail has been withdrawn. Your campaign donors are deleting your number as we speak. By tonight, you won't have money for a proper phone call, let alone a threat. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. Not fear of prison, fear of being ordinary. That was what Richard feared most. I stood up. You tried to make me the scapegoat of a fraud you signed for. That was your mistake. But trying to use my mercy as your weapon, that was your end. He called my name as I walked out. I did not turn. Behind me, he started shouting. At me. At Bolanla. At the lawyers. At a world that had finally stopped clapping for him. By sunrise, the story had broken. Not the messy gossip version Richard wanted. The documented version. The journalist I contacted released only what was legally cleared. Political candidate arrested in multi-billion naira fraud cover-up. Evidence tampering. Sister implicated. Campaign under investigation. By noon, Richard's party held an emergency press conference. The same chairman who had shaken his hand at the gala stood before cameras and said the party had zero tolerance for corruption. Zero tolerance. I almost laughed when I saw it. Politics is funny like that. They eat with you at night and deny knowing the taste of your soup by morning. Richard was suspended from the race immediately. By evening, Tenny released her own statement. She claimed she had only served as campaign manager and had no personal relationship with Richard beyond professional duties. Professional duties. The same woman who had been choosing curtains for Government House. By the next week, the same people who once called me the woman behind the man started calling me the whistleblower who brought down a fraud empire. People are funny. They praise your silence when it benefits them, then praise your courage when your silence stops being useful. The court case took months. Not the dramatic courtroom thunder Richard expected. No cheering crowd, no loyal supporters, no billionaire donors waiting outside with bail money. Just documents, statements, bank logs, server records, asset trails, and Bolanle finally choosing survival over family loyalty. She testified first. She handed over messages from Richard instructing her to plant the audit archive in my safe. She confirmed he wanted me framed before filing for divorce. She confirmed Tenny knew a scandal was coming, but did not know the full details. Bolanle tried to cry. The judge did not seem moved. When the verdict came, Richard stared at the floor. Guilty on the major counts: fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering, false reporting. Bolanle too. Less time than Richard because she cooperated, but still enough to remind her that hatred has legal consequences. As Richard was led away, he looked at me one last time. I searched my heart for triumph. I found none, only closure, the kind that does not dance, the kind that locks the door quietly and keeps walking. 2 days later, I sat in the back of a black SUV outside the corporate auction hall. Richard's assets had begun to fall like poorly stacked cards. His campaign funds were frozen. His shares were seized. His company, the same company he had tried to use as my prison gate, was being restructured under court-supervised liquidation. My lawyer called. The bid went through, madam. You now own controlling interest. I looked out at Lagos traffic moving like restless blood through the city. That company had once been the reason I sacrificed my peace. Now it was mine, not because Richard gave it to me, because the law took it from his hands and placed it where competence should have been all along. My driver asked, "Office, ma?" Not yet. I went first to my mother's house, a small, quiet home on a tree-lined street far from Richard's gates, convoy, and noise. My mother sat on the porch when I arrived. She did not ask if I had won. She only opened her arms. That was when I finally cried. Not for Richard, not for the company, not even for the marriage. I cried for the woman I used to be. The woman who believed love meant carrying a man's shame on her back until it bent her spine. My mother held me and said one thing. Kemi, marriage should never feel like compensation for saving a man. I understood her then. Because somewhere along the line, I had mistaken Richard's proposal for gratitude, and gratitude is not the same thing as love. Weeks later, I walked into Richard's former boardroom in a charcoal grey suit, the same color I wore the first time I audited his book 7 years ago. The board stood when I entered, not because I was someone's wife, not because I was attached to a powerful man, because I owned the room. The lawyer whispered, "The restructuring documents are ready." I nodded. "Then let's rebuild it properly." That evening, I opened the archived folder titled Project Recovery. Every recording, every audit trail, every log, every file that had protected me when love turned into a weapon. I did not delete them. I moved them into permanent legal archive. Because peace does not mean forgetting. Sometimes peace means knowing the truth is stored somewhere safe, where nobody can rewrite it again. I changed my name back to Kemi Adebayo. I removed Richard from every document where love had once made me careless. And I learned the lesson I should have learned 5 years earlier. Never confuse loyalty with silence. Love can help a man stand, but it should never help him hide. If you watch this far, comment. Love can't blind me. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more stories like this. Richard thought I was his scapegoat. Bolanle thought I was disposable. Tenny thought she was inheriting an empire. But in the end, I entered that marriage with a target on my back and walked out with my name, my freedom, and the company he tried to destroy me with. I was no longer an auditor fixing someone else's broken life. I was the architect of my own. And this time, every foundation was clean.